Hello everyone, welcome. We are from World English 2021 A class. My name is Adi Reza. I have my friends here.
Hello, my name is Cisca Fibriana.
And I'm Kartika Widodo.
In this video, we'll explore inner circle English varieties, specifically British, American, and Australian English. We'll delve into the phonological and vocabulary distinctions among three variants. When discussing phonological differences in languages and language varieties, we are referring to variations in how sounds are produced, perceived, and utilized across different dialects or accents. These variations encompass aspects such as pronunciation, intonation, stress patterns, and the inventory of speech sounds, which will be explained by my friend later in this video. And second thing that we're going to talk about is variation in vocabulary. Variation in vocabulary pertains to differences in word choices within a single language, in this case, English. These distinctions can be influenced by various factors, including region, age, social group, and historical changes. So, for the example, regional differences are often shaped by the historical settlement patterns or of various immigrant groups and the isolation of specific communities. The second is age. The introduction of new words and phrases is frequently linked to evolving cultural and technological trends. The third one is social group. Different social groups may develop their own vocabulary as a means of distinguishing themselves, reinforcing group identity, or effectively conveying specific information within their community. Fourth, history. Historical factors have a significant impact on language variation by introducing new concepts, technologies, and influences from other languages. Borrowed words from other languages and cultures exemplify how historical events can shape a language vocabulary. These two variations can be found in the three English varieties that we're going to talk about in this video, which is British English, American English, and Australian English. And the deep explanation will be explained by my friend. So time is yours, Peeps.
Okay, thank you. And for additional information in mentioning some objects in Australian English, many new words are found and tend to be strange and unfamiliar in American or British English. This is because the habit of the Australians who speak or do something more quickly causes them to call something with the abbreviation with the aim to shortening the time. So for example, first one is how they call truck. In American English, they call like usual, it's truck. But in British English, they call it like lorry. It is because they're dealing with the history of the first use of this vehicle in 19th century. While in Australian English, they use UT, or it is abbreviation of utility vehicle. And the second is fuel. In American English, they call it by gasoline or gas. In British English, they call it petrol. It is related to the history again. For the first time, they found it in 20th century. And in Australian English, they call it biofuel. Yeah, as you know, we already have fuel, we must have place for if you want to refill it. At the American English, this place they call by gas station, but for English they also have petrol station for this place. But different with Australian English, they use servo. This is abbreviation from service station. It is quite different because American and British usually use like gas or petrol, like when they call the fuel. And the next is cotton candy. American English, they call it like cotton candy, but British English, they call it by candy floss, while Australian English use fairy floss. It causes by the mentioned earlier it's influenced by the age or the teenager, which usually consuming this kind of food, and they use various flaws for the more something cute, then something cuter than candy or cotton. And then the next example is when they call potato chips. In American English, they call it with French fries, and in British English, they use crisps. Well, in Australian English, it is more specific, like hot chips. Why? Because, yeah, they want to make it more specific, because in Australia, if you just say chips, it can be ambiguous. Can be refers to another chips, not the potato chips itself. And next example is drugstore. In American English, they call it like drugstore, but in British they call it chemist, but in Australian English they call it pharmacist. As we know, pharmacist is like related with someone who made medicine, but here, when in Australia if we use drugstore, it means like something negative, because drug in Australia, it means like marijuana or something in that kind of marijuana or something. So they prefer use pharmacies rather than the drugstore itself. Okay, I think that is all my explanation about the variation in vocabulary. Next is from phonological variations by Kartika.
All right, thank you, Cisca. So here are some phonological distinction or variation. The first one, we have the stress patterns. So in the phonological, there are variations in the placement of stress within words. For example, in the words like laboratory, in the UK, they call laboratory, and in the US and Australian, they call laboratory. So it's quite similar, but actually there are distinction in the stress. For example, like in the UK, they tend to use the stress in the second syllable, in the b sound, but in the US, they stress in the first syllable, in the initial of the words. And next, we have the h sound dropping. So, in some accents of UK English, especially in the Cockney dialect, the h sound at the beginning of words is often dropped. For example, in the word house, house may be pronounced as house instead of house. So they just eliminate the h sound in the initial words. In contrast, both US and Australian English typically retain the h sound, so they pronounce it as house. And next, we have t pronunciation. In some varieties of Australian English, the t sound in the middle of words can be pronounced as a fast glottal stop. For example, in the word better, it might be pronounced as better. So the t sound is like more unread or just blurry with the next vowel. And next, we have rhoticity, or the R pronunciation. For US English, it's generally rhotic. It means that the R sound is pronounced in the all position, while some accents in the UK English, like receive pronunciation, are non-rhotic. It means that R sounds is not pronounced at the end of words and before the consonants. And for Australian English can be either rhotic or non-rhotic. It's depending on the region and the speaker that pronounce it. So for the sound in the end of the words, we have an example. For the UK, they pronounce car as car. So UK like eliminate the sound in the end. And for US, they just pronounce pronounce it like car, car. And for Australian, they just similar like the UK, so they pronounce it car, car. Next, we have the example of the pronunciation of certain vowels. There are some examples. For the first, we have R sound in the words like dance. So in UK, dance is pronounced dance, dance. And from the US and Australians, they pronounce it dance, dance. So in UK, they use R sound, but in US and Australians, they use diphthongs A, A. And next we have tomato. So in UK, they call it tomato, tomato. And similar like UK, Australian also pronounce it tomato, tomato. And next, for the US, they call it tomato, tomato. So US use the diphthongs A rather than vowels R. And we also have more examples like water. In the UK, it's often pronounced like water, water, with a bit of a rounded sound. And in the US, you might hear water, water. So the R is a flatter R sound. And in Australia, it's sometimes more like water, water, with a touch of an Aussie flair. And next, we have schedule. In the US, we call it schedule, schedule. And in the UK and Australian, they commonly pronounce it as schedule, schedule. So they just eliminate the k sound and they emphasize on the first syllable, schedule. All right, I think that's all the comparison between the inner circle Englishes from UK, US, and Australian. Hopefully this video will help you to distinguish the UK, US, and Australian accent, and you can gain more knowledge from this video. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.